So the talk for today is in the fullness of time. And there are many different ways that could go. There are many, many different ways that could go. Well, what I'd like to talk about is something we talk about very often. Your new life begins with a new thought. You ever hear us say that?
Yeah.
Once in a while? Usually when we start talking about this, the next thing we start talking about is the agricultural metaphor of seeds and soil and how that really applies to our thinking. Do you guys know the agricultural metaphor? You know, it's really kind of simple. You're going to get it again anyway. It's really kind of simple. A seed is the metaphor for an idea. And a seed has absolutely everything that it requires to become whatever it is intended to be. So if you plant tomato seeds, you don't get pizza trees. If you plant pizza seeds, I'd like to find out where you got them from.
The bacon seeds.
Exactly. So whatever that idea is, and we talk about this quite frequently, you know, that we're planting ideas into this law, and the law has all of the intelligence to recreate what it needs to build that idea into its fruition. So there you have a seed that we've planted, right, into this soil that knows what to do with it, and then what happens? We wait. Right? So I was going to talk a lot about the seed metaphor, but what I really wanted to talk about was the gardener. You see, the seed already has everything it needs. The ideas that come across our path, that are brought into our consciousness, that are emerging from spirit through the channel of who we are whole and complete already. But if we think about it, we're the gardeners of those ideas. There was a little bit of it in the reading. When you pull up the weeds from the garden of your thinking, then only the thoughts that you desire remain. Now, we use this metaphor a lot, but I have a little bit of a difficult problem with it. Have you ever tried to not think about anything? Don't look at blue. Right. I could have said red. But when we try not to think about something, what do we end up doing? We end up spending a lot of time thinking about it. So if you're thinking about weeding the garden of your thoughts, what are you thinking about?
Weeds.
The weeds, right? I'm not going to think negative thoughts. And then what happens to me, and I'm pretty sure it happens to everybody, is the pile of negative thoughts and what could possibly go wrong, what's already wrong, what was wrong, what might be wrong tomorrow, start flowing through the mind, and we place our attention on it. So in fact, what we've done is we've started watering the weeds so that they're sprouting even more fully. So what we have to do as a gardener, okay, so like a gardener is someone who actually understands the entire process of planting, growing, caring for, and reaping, and sowing again. It's this cycle, right? So the gardener actually knows that it's really not a good idea to plant seeds in January. You can do it. Usually requires a pick and a shovel and possibly a jackhammer. And you can put the seeds in there and cover them up. And some people actually expect them to grow immediately. Right? But a gardener knows you wait until the soil has become prepared to receive the seed. That it has warmed with the sunlight. That it has moved into a season where there is enough water and all of the soil is loosened up and the nutrients are prepared. It has received back that which the winter put into it. so that it is prepared for the idea, the seed to be planted in it so that it can grow. A gardener knows that. The other thing a gardener does is they generally have tools, right? So if you're gardening, you can do it with a stick and a seed. You can do it with your bare hands. Sometimes that's fun. Everybody ever have an idea that they just had to get dirty with? You know, get your hands going, and it's like, I'm going to dig around in this, and, you know. Dave's over there shaking his head.
Never.
I don't believe it.
Never.
Sometimes we really enjoy getting into the mud of what we want to plant. You know, that's called therapy. See, because the wonderful thing about therapy is you can go into therapy and you can spend hours and hours and hours and much treasure and time finding out what went wrong. When. And that's wonderful insight. And at the end of that process, what do you have? The knowledge of what went wrong when. And you are still faced with the choice of, okay, now what do I want? Thank you, Dr. Lincoln. I never get too scientific when Dr. Lincoln is in the room. So you're still at the point of choice. What crop do we want to plant? What seeds do we want to bring into our experience? The other thing a gardener knows is how to take time. Does anybody have houseplants? Yeah. Anybody have an actual garden? Yay. A couple of people. I have one that's currently full of weeds.
Oh.
That's why I meditate.
That's not a metaphor.
It could have been a metaphor. It's not currently a metaphor. But what a gardener does is, okay, so you've gotten this thing. You've cleared the weeds out, right? You've prepped the soil, you've turned it over, you've maybe added some fertilizer. There's metaphor there, we're not going that way. But you've prepared the soil to receive the seed, and you've planted, you've dug your little hole, and you've dropped the seed in there, and you've covered it over. Now already you've spent a great deal of time preparing for growing this seed, right? You've waited to the right season, you've done all the preparation work. Now this is what equates in New Thought to meditation, classes, self-discipline, and awareness of oneself. So there are people in this particular teaching of New Thought that believe that you can just say a prayer and it's going to happen. I disagree with that. This is not magic. This is not magical thinking. If you do not prepare to receive the good of your prayer, what are you preparing? A weedy garden and expecting to get roses. That's magical thinking. But New Thought is not about magical thinking. It is actually about creating a tendency of our thoughts that is to the good that was talked about in the reading. The love, the peace, the joy, the prosperity that we all desire innately to experience in life. Yet quite often we have magical thinking about it. I'm just going to do this prayer and it'll happen. Now that's true if your garden is already prepared. You can do the prayer and it will happen if there is nothing standing in the way of that. Think about that. If there is no thought standing in the way of that, it will manifest instantly. This is why most of us have to spend some time preparing the soil of our minds, clearing out the negative belief structures, clearing out the blaming and the shame and the guilt that we feel from past experiences, so that we can be a open and receptive channel of this new idea coming forward. The gardener knows this. The next thing that happens when you get this plant growing, this idea growing in your life, is you have to nurture it. You can't plant it and go, grow on that. Right? You stomp on a seedling, it will kill it. How many times do we have a wonderful, beautiful, loving, prosperous idea? And we plant that idea, we do the meditation around it, we do the prayer around it, and then we actively act against it, hoping that it's going to happen anyway. That's stomping on the seedling. If you want that seedling to grow into the fullness, to bear fruit, to bear flowers, whatever the seed was that you planted, you have to nurture it. You have to continue to care for it. You have to dig up the weeds that start growing around it so that it has the opportunity to grow into the fullness of your experience. That's true for all of us. Well, the people who could do this instantly, we call them avatars. There weren't that many of them. And each one that could do this instantly changed the entire course of the world. If that's where you want to be, I'm going to suggest you need to do a lot of weeding. You need to do a lot of preparation. You need to be willing to give all of your attention to that objective. Not part of it. You're not going to be a Sunday Buddha. You know? It ain't going to happen. You know, you can't do this once a week or even twice a week and expect to reach enlightenment. You have to do it all the time, because that's what enlightenment is. Now, most of us don't have that kind of objective in mind. Most of us are saying, I just want life to get a little bit better. Yeah? You know? I want to experience a little more fully these things of love and peace and harmony and joy and prosperity in my life. I don't have to have it all. I just want a little bit more. You know? And there's nothing wrong with wanting more good. That's the nature of who we are. We come into this world and we get to experience more and more good if we choose to look at it that way. There's a desire to experience more good. And what I mean by good is life more fully. You know, not just like the fun toys. Like nice cars are fun. You know? Beautiful places to be are fun. They're joyous. Meaningful friendships are uplifting. We want these things in our lives, and there's nothing wrong with wanting them. Yet sometimes we're planting weeds in those directions rather than planting flowers. Right? Anybody ever have the experience of really, having a deep and wonderful, intimate relationship? It doesn't have to be love relationship, but, friendship, let's call it, right? And then you find yourself yelling and screaming at this person you truly love. You know? And it's part of the package deal. Often what happens is you get through that stage and it releases whatever negativity you've had, and then you can let go of that and you can find your way back to peace, harmony, and love. Often it can have such a dramatic impact on the relationship that the relationship ceases to be, and we wonder why. Right? And it doesn't have to be that dramatic. We do that in smaller and smaller degrees. But if we want to have love in our life, we have to be the love that we want to have in our life. That's the seed idea, right? Everything that's required of love is encapsulated in being love. So, again, a gardener knows this, that if you want something to blossom in your life, you want something to experience something in your life, you have to spend the time nurturing it into bloom. Right? So we have a choice each day that we go about our business. Are we going to be a gardener and care for our thinking and care for the ideas that we would like to see blossom in our lives or not? It takes time and understanding and patience and discipline. And those are words that we don't often like to hear. Discipline? Really? That's the inner discipline to do the work. Nobody else is going to reap our harvest. We are. Individually going to reap the harvest that we sow. So if you want more love and joy and peace and prosperity in your life, you have to begin sowing love and peace and joy and prosperity in your life. Otherwise, you're going to get the crop that you think you already have.
The crop.
The crop. That would be an individual decision. One could, in fact, take it that way. But I'm not gonna. So I'd just like to leave you with this. You know, there are many ideas that you can have. And you get to choose which seeds you're going to plant. But please, before you start planting seeds, prepare the soil of your soul. Prepare your consciousness to receive the good idea that you're going to plant into it. You know, and we can do that. Like the gardener, when we find a weed in our thinking, you can root it up. Remember, that's still looking at the weed and its roots, right? Or you can pull it and then plant something new. Because something will fill that void. And you can choose to plant the opposite idea of whatever you feel that negative thought is, or you can just leave it alone and it'll grow strong. And it'll probably block the sun from the seed that you're trying to plant for a different experience in your life. That's just been my experience. You know, I assume that people have the same type of experience to some degree, or you wouldn't be here. And I'm grateful for that, because each of us is in fact a gardener in our lives, and we have the opportunity to choose who we choose to be. It could be a wonderful thing. I invite you to try. So in this summertime, go and get your spade and your shovel and your watering can, a nice pair of gloves and some knee pads. It works wonders. Namaste.
Namaste.